Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper, and I wanted to share some LPVO mistakes that I've made with all of you so that hopefully you can avoid making them yourself and probably save some money in the long run. I've used a few different types of LPVOs, and over the years you can even go back on the channel and see I've used primary arms, Trigicon, Loophole, and this is a Sig Sauer Tango MSR 1 to 10. And I've learned quite a bit about what I should expect from an LPVO and what it is I'm actually looking for when it comes to an optic, and how some of these on paper sound great, but in practice don't actually meet the requirements that you're trying to place upon them. So here's my mistakes, and this is what I want you to pay attention to because I think it could help you when you're looking for a good optic. On paper, everything sounds great about this particular LPVO. Sig Sauer Tango MSR 1 to 10, 28mm objective lens with a 34mm tube, and it weighs 20.4 ounces without the mount. So pretty lightweight, and it comes with the mount, which gives you all the torque specs you need on it as well for mounting. So in general, it's a really nice complete package with scope caps and all that stuff as well for around 450 bucks on sale, which is why I picked it up, because I thought, man, for the price, this scope gives you a lot of capability. But you find out quickly that it doesn't do what you think it will. So first off, it's got cap turrets, it's got half MOA adjustments because this is not like a precision long-range rifle scope, so half MOA is the best you can get. Has an MSR BDC 10 reticle in it, which is not calibrated for any specific cartridge, so you do have to use like a Strelak Pro app or something similar to that in case you're dealing with Russian sanctions at this point. But either way, you're going to have to figure out how your cartridge works with the reticle. And for, its $450 price point, it sounds like a good deal, especially getting all the way up to that 10x magnification range. And yes, it is illuminated. It uses 1CR2032. The illumination is not daylight bright, and you will not use it for a replacement red dot. It is just for shooting in like dawn or dusk situations or low light situations in general, where you need a little bit of extra contrast. But in general, I thought this was a good idea because here I am with a 20-inch Aero Precision 5.56 build, and I wanted a little bit more magnification than usual because I felt like I could probably reach out and touch something if I needed to, right? But here's the thing, it just doesn't work the way you think it will. And this is why I want you to avoid this, because like I said, at $450, it sounds like a great deal, but you're just wasting money basically. Sorry, but it's just true. And this optic isn't necessarily a bad optic. It's just disguised as something that it's not, okay? Now, what's the main issue I have with this optic? And I will say there's one thing I did correct on this optic, and we'll talk about that here in just a second, because there is one thing about it that I think should probably apply to almost every LPVO, especially for something chambered in 5.56, because in my experience, between two different versions of these style of optics, I found that this version actually works better for that application. But at 1 to 10 with this optic, at 10x, you're thinking, okay, I can reach out, and I also need it for positive identification, right? Because it's a 5.56 cartridge. It's only got a maximum effective range of like 500 or 600 yards, or at least that's what people say, right? So, okay, I'm looking for about 600 yards of capability. 10x, I mean, 10x goes further than that in all honesty. So with 10x, what I'm really hoping for is good positive identification. And this glass is not clear enough to actually get PID using 10x magnification. And I mean that regardless of range. Now, at 100 yards, sure, you can see the target better and maybe identify if they have like a handgun in their hand or something like that. Great. Well, do you need 10x magnification at 100 yards to do that? No. But the problem is that at 400, 500, 600 yards, this 10x on this level of glass clarity isn't clear enough to actually see anything. And that's just something I've been struggling with over the past year of using this optic, okay? Within closer ranges, it feels like it's a good magnification. It feels like it's a good, clear optic. But as soon as you start reaching out further, you realize that the clarity's not there. You don't have any sort of side focus parallax adjustment, which can help remedy some of that, although it's really meant to make sure that your reticle is in focus and properly on target. But either way, understand that there's no way to fix that. The only way to fix it is to have better glass. And because the glass is of low quality, because this is a budget optic, to get a 1 to 10 28mm objective lens with a 34mm tube with a mount for $450, this is a cheap optic. And the glass reflects that highly. Now, at 6x, I can see pretty decent, okay? At 4x, I can see pretty good too. And with a 5.56, do I really need 10x? Probably not. However, there's a reason why having it all the way up to 10x in this configuration doesn't really equate to that being effective, all right? This is a second focal plane rifle scope. And I think that's the best decision I made when it came to LPVOs. First focal plane sounds great, and everybody thinks it's a hotness, right? Because at first focal plane, no matter what magnification range you're at, your bullet drop compensation reticle inside of your scope will line up perfectly and everything's good to go. Well, second focal plane, in my opinion, works better for 5.56 specifically for a lot of different reasons, and this scope actually is second focal plane. Now, the problem with it being second focal plane is that at max magnification, everything finally lines up with your bullet drop compensation and your reticle, right? Well, at max magnification with this optic at 10x, I don't have a clear sight picture. I don't have the ability to PID something, which means that I don't really see the target very well either. And that's a big problem. So the combination of things here don't really work well together. Now, I can say that on 6x it works, on 4x it works better, but I also have a loopholed Freedom 1.5 to 4x LPVO that works better at 4x than this does because it's got better glass. And that's all there is to it. I mean, the clarity matters quite a bit. And although this can go down to 4x, at that point, I only can use the center aiming point of the reticle, which is fine with 5.56. And the reason I think second focal plane is the way to go on LPVOs and why it's the one thing I did right on this optic is because 5.56 has a pretty flat trajectory, generally out to about 300 yards. And your center aiming point on your reticle is always true to your zero, regardless of magnification range, even on a second focal plane scope. Your bullet drop compensation won't be true. However, if you're using bullet drop compensation, a lot of times you're going to be at max magnification anyway in order to positively identify the target you're shooting at and to just try to get better shots and first shot on target capability. So understand that, in my opinion, this would be a better scope at a 1 to 6 level. And in fact, Brassfax has even mentioned that on his channel that the 1 to 6 Tango MSR is maybe the only cheap scope that's worth anything, right? And unfortunately, at this point in time, I probably agree with him because at 1 to 6, this works okay, but now it's no longer functioning in the way that it's supposed to. It weighs more, it's larger, and it's just a waste of money because it also costs more than the 1 to 6 version. So understand that if you're going up to 10x anyway, because you think you need that effective range and you think you need that PID at those levels and you think you need to be able to see that far, you might just be using the wrong scope in general, okay? And a 3 to 9, like Grandpa used to use, or even something like the 2.5 to 10s you're seeing a lot of lately, are probably a better option, especially if you're running an offset red dot, because at that point you at least have 1x capability, and then you have your magnification, and generally some of those higher magnification scopes, once you get up to 2.5 to 10 and beyond, generally have side focus parallax adjustment and things like that, of that nature, which will allow you to achieve better clarity, even though that's not the main purpose of those adjustments. But either way, this optic just isn't worth it, even though it's so inexpensive. Now, I do want to mention that the biggest supporter of the channel is Midway USA, and Midway USA allows me to get out here and test this kind of stuff and give you my feedback on some of the products that they carry, and they do carry this optic. And I don't recommend it, and I wouldn't get it from them. And that's just what I'm telling you. And I actually acquired this before I ever had a partnership with Midway USA, but I'm just letting you know that what I would do for $450, if that's kind of your budget range, is get a second focal plane 1 to 6 scope, and you're gonna have a better experience. It's gonna do more for you, and don't be concerned about first focal plane because that's gonna be more expensive, and it's basically, at least in my opinion, kind of unnecessary if you're running a 5.56. Now, maybe if we're talking 308 or something like that, it might be more imperative, but for a rifle like this one, I don't think it's gonna make a big difference. It's gonna save you money. It's generally gonna cost less, and it's going to give you better options when it comes to manufacturers even, because if you look at companies like Leupold or Trijicon, you can get a second focal plane LPVO from them, and it's a lot less expensive than their first focal plane offerings, and you get a lot better glass clarity than you get with something like this Sig Sauer Tango MSR 1 to 10. And that's just what I want to let you know. These are the mistakes that I've made. So just as a review of all the different things that I think you should avoid when it comes to this situation right here, right? This LPVO optic and mistakes that are similar to it, regardless of company, manufacturer, or product model, right? It applies to any other LPVO in, I guess, that price range, but also in general, okay? Yes, if you want to get a first focal plane 1 to 10x LPVO, I mean, power to you, but my suggestion then is to look at the Vortex Razor HG Gen 2 or get a EOTech Voodoo, right? I mean, those are going to be like the only two that are worth anything because the glass clarity at least is there to keep up. But even then, I feel like you're spending a lot of money and putting a lot of effort into something that's not necessarily required for what it is you're trying to accomplish, unless it's going on something other than a 5.56 carbine, right? And then at the same time, if you're going to be in the lower budget level, like I find myself in on a regular basis, well, then just stick to what works. Keep it simple. A 1 to 6 is definitely good to go. It's probably the right magnification range for an LPVO for a 5.56 carbine. Get second focal plane because you really don't need first focal plane. And as long as you're within 300 yards, that center aiming point's still going to be relatively true. And then once you need that max magnification, well, now you can use your BDC. And don't feel like that extra magnification is actually going to accomplish what it is you think you can do with it, aka getting positive ID, because I can't use this 10x magnification to get positive ID. I don't need this 10x magnification to shoot 5.56 accurately out to the distances that it's effective at. And all I did was spend more money to have a capability that really didn't work out. And not to mention, because it's second focal plane, now when you combine the 10x magnification with the fact that the BDC only works at 10x, now you have two parts of the scope that no longer function properly, right? Because I can't use the BDC unless it's at 10x, and at 10x I can't really see what I'm trying to hit, so therefore both of them are wasted, okay? That's just what I wanted to share with you. This is what I've learned over the years. Like I said, use of primary arms, Trijicon, Loophole, now I have the Sig Sauer. Look, do I have experience with some of the higher end ones like the Vortex Razor or the EOTech Voodoo? I don't. But this is what I've learned from using these lower end models. And I had the Trijicon Credo 1 to 8, which was a really nice optic, but I've since traded that out as well because of a lot of the same reasonings here. You know, 8 was great except for as a first focal plane reticle, which meant that the reticle at 1x wasn't very good, and at 8x it was a little too much. So a lot of issues happen with that as well. Man, that 1 to 6, that's really what you're looking for, at least in my opinion, especially if you're going to do that offset red dot. I mean, that's a good way to look at it. 1 to 6, I mean, if you want to go budget, you got the Tango MSR 1 to 6 is still decent. You've also got the primary arms options. They've got that new Nova reticle, which looks really promising. You also have the Vortex Strike Eagle, right? I mean, there's some decent LPVOs out there if you're willing to sacrifice some of these features that everybody seems to be chasing after that don't actually give you what it is you need. And of course, if you do need that extra magnification or you just decide you really want it, then you're just probably going to want to spend the extra money and get some really high quality glass to go along with it, because otherwise I think you're going to be disappointed. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention. Hopefully this helps get whatever that was out of my face, and hopefully it helps you make better decisions when it comes to choosing optics for your rifle setup. And you know, these mistakes are things that I've made so that hopefully you don't have to. And if you have any questions for me, leave it in the comments below. Also, if you have suggestions about different LPVOs or other mistakes that you've made that you think that would be relevant to the conversation, leave those below too, because this is all about us trying to learn together. I'm not an optics expert by any means. I am a guy who goes out and shoots quite a bit, and I've just found that after using a few different versions of these types of optics that there's only one that really makes a lot of sense to me at this point in time, especially in that price range. So anything else you got for me, you can go to magicprepper.com. And besides that, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper. I knew you were all going to ask what was on my hip. It's just one of these, no big deal. That was just 45 long, Colt, let's be honest.